Okay, in the last video I talked about aperture priority and shutter priority, and on this video I'm going to actually basically talk about some simple camera modes on cameras that don't have manual control. But before I get into that, I want to just make one point with the aperture and shutter priorities. And in a Canon it would be aperture value or time value. The TV is actually time value, which is shutter priority or shutter in another camera. So Canon is a little different. They use the TV and the AV, which might throw you off a little bit if you use a Canon camera. The main point I want to make is if you want to go to manual control of your camera, it'll be real easy if you understand aperture and shutter priority in your camera. So if you understand how to use the aperture, how to change the aperture or the shutter, or the shutter, the only difference going to manual will be that you will have there'll be a meter, some kind of symbol for a meter, which will be plus or minus depending on which cameras, which way it goes. But it'll be plus or minus on one end, plus on one end and minus on the other end. You basically want to get to the middle, unless you need a little bit of finagling of that exposure to get the perfect exposure. But in general, it'll be somewhere around the middle of that meter, and that you will be controlling the shutter and the aperture in manual mode, and assuming you already set the white balance, the ISO. So the good news is once you understand aperture priority and shutter priority, going to manual really isn't that complicated, and it's fairly simple, and it opens up doors of creativity and more that you can do with a camera. Or if you read, as you learn more, you'll be able to keep up with what you're learning, because really that's the ultimate, is manual control, which you don't need for everything, but you will need it from time to time. For instance, long exposures, or any kind of, if you're doing waterfalls, you want the water to show, star trails, long exposures at nighttime, fireworks maybe. So I just want to plant the seed that manual is not that much further than already going to aperture or shutter priority. So if you have a camera that's more basic and does not have really manual control, some of my students, I notice, they have cameras I've seen that just have a dial on the top with maybe some, there might be a picture of somebody running, there might be something that looks like a portrait of a person, there might be those kind of things, little symbols on your dial. If that's the case, typically one of your little modes on your dial will be, sometimes it's green, like a green symbol, which is auto everything. Green seems to be a very common thing. I might say P for program mode, which is the camera is really doing everything basically. But if you have the little portrait-y guy, that's really, if you're going to do a portrait, it's telling you that if you set it on that little setting, that will help you to do a portrait basically. If you're doing a sports shot, the guy running symbol, well, that will actually help you do an action shot per se. You might have a couple other symbols, maybe something night that looks like a nighttime symbol with stars or something. That's literally what it is. It's shooting pictures at nighttime. It will help with those some of the crazy exposures you would get at nighttime. It might have a sometimes you have to go in a little bit into a menu, into a scene mode, what's called scene modes. A lot of cameras you'll go in and you'll have sometimes 30, 40, 50 options. Some of them might be things like black and white photo, or a toy photo, like it makes it like a diorama looking photo, or tilt shift. And sometimes it'll change the colors. It'll give you some funny colors if you want. But it also will have like the snowman. You might see a picture of a snowman, which is using, if the scene is primarily white, like snow, sometimes a real bright beach, light colored sand, if that's primarily your subject, may throw off your meter also. So basically these modes are just hints and ways to get you to be able to take a photo in a certain situation that you might just rack your brains and not know if you're doing the right thing. So the cameras are set up with some of these modes in advance from the companies to kind of get you in the right direction on those cameras. If your camera has more of the manual modes, the aperture priorities or shutter priorities. You want to stick with those because you'll never learn, and the goal of the class is to get you to use those primarily, because you will never be able to grow. And once you learn advanced things, you'll really be stunted. You'll be more lost, because you'll be told to take a 10-second exposure and you won't even know that that's your shutter priority. Or in Canon, what did I say that was? Time value is what TV stands for in Canon, which is very confusing because they're the only brand that actually uses that kind of terminology. So that really, if you've used other cameras, using a Canon may throw you off till you understand that it's really just the TV is S and the AV is actually like A on any other camera, aperture. So it's a little confusing there. But I just wanted to address those simple issues for today and make a real short video so I could post this on YouTube. And good luck.